Welcome back to the channel. In this video, we are going to go over how to magnetize a Deff dread. You can build the model to about this point. There's a few different options along the way on how you want to customize it. I made this one for a friend, so he told me what options he wanted. Build the arms, and I'm just going to kind of set them in there and see what angle I like with both the upper and lower. And make sure I magnetize it so I give myself enough space so the arms aren't interfering with each other. Or the legs. We just want to have clearance between the two arms and between the lower arms and the legs. Now here we're taking our magnets and setting them in the arm sockets just to kind of see what size we want to use on the model. And decided on using a 6x2mm magnet inside the torso, and then on the limbs themselves we'll use a 5x1mm magnet. I'm going to start by marking the center of the torso sockets with the Sharpie. If it's not perfectly centered, you can kind of eyeball it and see, maybe drill this hole on the northeast corner of the dot. So they're more just a guide than have to be perfectly center. And then use your hobby knife to start a pilot hole. I'm going to do all 4 in a row just to kind of keep it moving along. After the pilot holes are done, I'm going to step it up to 5/64 drill bit. And then we're going to step it up to a 3mm or 1/8 drill bit. I like to drill my models by hand. The drill I have is too powerful to use on these, and I do have a Dremel, but it's just loud, and I like doing this inside the house with my wife while we're kind of watching a show. It's really not that much harder. It is definitely harder than using a drill, but it's not too bad, and you can wrap the tape or tape up the end of a drill bit if it's hurting your fingers. But as you can see there, I just did 2, and this recording is on double speed, but it didn't take too long at all. Then we will be stepping it up to a 13/64 or 5mm drill bit. Same thing, we're just progressively making the holes bigger and bigger. That's just easier. I find that now when I get into a situation like this where there's 2 big burrs, I just come in with my hobby knife and clean them out, and then you can keep drilling. Once you break through with these bigger bits, they want to pull into the torso because the full hole isn't drilled. But you can see where there's the thin plastic, and then you can just kind of come in with your hobby knife, clean most of it up, and then turn it in again. Once it's in a bit, you can turn it backwards, and it'll kind of fold down those thin pieces of plastic, and then put it back in and spin it clockwise like you normally would, just to kind of clean up any other burrs. This is a better shot of the drill actually punching through. As you can see, it doesn't quite look like a hole, but you just come in with your hobby knife and clean it up a bit, and then put the drill bit back in, turn it backwards, so counterclockwise, to clean up the thin plastic, turn it back clockwise, and it cleans out all the other burrs. We're going to step up the drill bit size one more time to 15/64 or 6mm. Just go around all 4 corners again and run the drill bit through. Get a stack of magnets to test the hole size, see how it fits. I want to bury the magnets kind of in the torso more and try and get the ball end of the arm ball joint socket to get as much surface area as possible to try and alleviate some saggy arm syndrome. And if any of the holes you drilled weren't quite big enough, you don't really want to go to the next drill bit larger size, or you don't have it, or it's too much bigger, you can just wobble the drill bit in the hole and try get some more material that way. Now we're going to set the arms up, so I'm just going to kind of set them in there, see what angle I like. I'm going to get a pot of Abaddon black, or whatever black you are currently using will work. I'm going to get a worn out paintbrush, one that I don't care if the paint dries on it, and I'm just going to kind of line the inside of the ball socket on the torso with black paint. Then I'm going to grab the lower arms and try and precisely set them in there how I wanted, and try not to move them once I press them in there. So set them in there like that, hold them for a second, pull them out, and you should be able to see where the joint was not making contact, and that's where we're going to cut our flat spot for the magnets. So we'll grab our clippers, and I don't want to grab too much, so I'm just kind of shredding the top of it a bit until I get it down to a nice flat spot that I want. You can do this with a hobby knife too if you want, if you're careful and you cut on some sort of cutting platform. I like to just kind of pinch it away with the cutters there, and then once I get it to where I kind of like it, I'll come in with the hobby knife and just clean it up a little bit. So do that to both the arms, and then we'll glue on the magnets. You want to do this because the magnets don't really like to stick to anything because they have like such a smooth surface. So we're trying to help the magnets out as best we can by providing as much surface area as we can for them to stick to. And yeah, you can see cleaning up that last one. Now we're going to check the magnet polarity. We want them to basically be the same polarity sticking out. Not that the arms are interchangeable left and right. You have a definite left and a definite right arm, but it will matter once we magnetize the guns. So we want everything to be able to fit in everywhere. So you can hold your stack of magnets against the magnets you set aside, and if they're resisting, you know it's the same polarity, as in, you know, they're all the positive sides. So I'm just going to mark those two, and we'll know to stick those sides down. So here I'm using Bob Smith Industries, a medium viscosity super glue. Just putting a pretty generous dab on. Using my hobby knife to press it down and my fingers to hold it while I pull the hobby knife away, and then I just want to center it on the joint there. Set it aside to dry, and then we'll do the exact same for the other arm. A nice generous helping of super glue. Use the hobby knife to assist you. Center the magnet and set it aside to dry. Before proceeding to the next step, you want to take the arms that now have the magnets glued on, and you want to press them to the sockets and make sure that it bottoms out. If the hole is too tight, you might want to go back with your drill bit and open it up a little more. But basically, if they're too tight, the magnets will break off eventually while you're trying to press them in there. So a tight fit is good, too tight is bad. Now we're going to start packing the chest cavity with milliput. This is a pretty big cavity, and I might have done something different before and tried to fill it in with who knows what, sprues or something, so I didn't have to use so much milliput, but just push it in there and try to pack it down. I like to use a little toothpick or a skewer or anything like that. Just dip it in water so the milliput doesn't end up sticking to it. Once you've built up enough, it should look something like this on either side. It's not perfectly flat or anything yet. We don't really care about that. We're going to add an extra magnet to each arm. and that'll be the magnet that ends up being glued inside the torso. We're gonna use our toothpick to try and get some water on the milliput there, because we want to make sure we glue the magnets in and we don't want them to just stick. So we're kind of loading it up with water on either side, 1 drop at a time kind of thing. Then we're also going to put just a little bit of water on the end of the magnet that we're going to press in there. So make sure you press the arm all the way in, kind of give it a little rotation to try to make sure the milliput isn't sticking. And you should have something that kind of looks like that. I'm going to dip it in again, press it in again, make sure it's at the depth I want, and then when you're finished it should look something like this. A nice little flat spot on the inside that we're going to glue the inner magnet to. So after you've let the milliput dry for at least 3 hours, we can go ahead and glue the magnet in. So still mark it in case something goes awry and it flips around, or I've had magnets do weird things, but basically if you see that black dot, you know you glued it in wrong, so you can try and get it out before the glue sets. And then just put some glue in the socket. We're going to put the magnet on the other stack of magnets, and we're just going to leave it sitting in there like that, just to make sure it's perfectly aligned in there. After you let the super glue dry on the magnets, they should look pretty firm in there, kind of square. After you drop the model, it'll be missing those exhaust pieces if you're an idiot like me. But as you can see, both arms click in there pretty good, and the socket is almost resting right on the ball. So it looks clean and you can't tell it's magnetized at all. So we're going to do kind of the same procedure for the top arms. I kind of wanted it to look like it was, in mid swing with both sets of its claws. So I'm going to put these ones kind of horizontal to the ground as well. But we'll be using the same technique that we did for the lower arms. So we're going to mark the sockets. And if you do this before you drill the holes, you can just do a black dot in the center of the socket, and you don't have to do the outside of the socket like I do. But I didn't think of it till after, so that's why I'm doing it this way. And then of course grab the arms and put them in the sockets. Try not to move them too much, because or else you'll smear the paint around, and then you can pull them out and see what you're working with. We're going to try our hardest to keep the angle correct when we shape the flat spot onto the ball end of the ball joint. So I just try and grind it down a little bit with the cutters. I couldn't really grab on too much of it without risk of wrecking it. And then slow and steady, I just use my hobby knife to kind of trim it all the way down to the black line. You can see one edge is a little smeared, but I pretty much go slow and steady with this part. Now we'll glue the magnet on the ball end of the ball joint. Check your polarity. You can take the stack of magnets and it should repel if you hold it against the magnet that's already inside the chest cavity. And then that's the side you glue down, so you mark it with the black Sharpie. Add the super glue to the ball and glue the magnet down. As you can see, I struggle with this one. For the second one, I just grab the magnet. These ones are big enough that you can just kind of set them on there. And then, of course, center it on the ball. So now, like we did for the bottom arms, we're just going to stick milliput in his upper torso and use just a little toothpick dipped in water so that the milliput isn't trying to stick to it all the time. And we're just kind of trying to press it against the roof of the torso, and we're just going to kind of build it up until we can squish the magnets in like we did on the lower arms. As you can see, it's starting to get built up there, so what we're going to do is we're going to keep jamming milliput in there and we're just going to force it against the roof because we don't want this to come loose and just be shaking around in the model either, because that would be a waste of milliput and a waste of those magnets. So we're just going to keep shoving the milliput in, trying to keep it wet because it'll adhere to itself a lot better if it's a bit damp. And as we put the milliput in there, we're just going to press it against the roof of the model. Well, once it's built up to about this point, we can start to think about putting the magnet side of the arm in to the body cavity. So what we're going to do is we're just going to simply put a magnet on the end of it, dip it in the water so it doesn't stick, and work its way in there. So this side I didn't quite have enough milliput, so I'm going to go back and put some more in that side. This side was in a lot better shape, so again, dip the magnet in water, try to work the socket all the way in, just lightly pressing and maybe giving a little wiggle. Make sure the super glue is completely dry. This one the magnet's stuck in. I usually don't like them to stick in because when you pull the arm out, it'll kind of pull back on the milliput. But this one seemed like it wasn't moving at all, so I left it. So we're gonna go back to the other side and pack it fuller of milliput. Again, just doing the same thing, kind of pressing it in, pressing it more towards the top while also pressing it back. Keeping it wet helps it stick to all the other milliput that's in there. So I think that's the last piece. I jam it in there, and then we're ready to press the arm with the 2 magnets on it. So then we'll press the arm in, make sure you have the 2 magnets on the end and just one. There's me trying to dip it in some water. I pressed both arms in at the same time, just in case the milliput was affected on either side by pressing the one in. And on that side, the magnet stayed in too, so I just left it. And that is all 4 arms magnetized. So we made sure the polarity was the exact same on all 4. Not that the upper arms can be switched around, but you can certainly move the lower arms around if you want. We also didn't glue the claws or the blades on because we'll glue them on at this point so we can make sure that they're not interfering with each other and kind of glue them all on in a different angle. But as you can see, so you can move that arm so you can have the 2 little arms on one side if you want. Well, that is the end of part 1. Please stay tuned for when we do part 2, which will be all the gun options, as well as gluing the saws and claws on his arms. Please like and subscribe. If you have any questions, you can leave a comment. If you have any suggestions, you can leave a comment, and I will try and get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you very much.